Can you tell us a little bit, or encapsulate for us your new book, which is The Power of Story, if I understand?
The Power Story really reflects the years of work that I have spent in listening to thousands of people's stories, and the appreciation that I developed in the power of story to either help people to navigate successfully in life or to actually be the actual culprit that blocks them from achieving real success in whatever it is that they are attempting to achieve. Story has enormous influence in people's lives. In fact, I've come so strongly to believe that story becomes destiny. And all story really is really the interpretation we give to our world of experience. And that story may or may not reflect the real world, may or may not help us to navigate where we want to go, and may or may not be consistent or aligned with our deepest values and beliefs. A great story has all of those elements correctly aligned. And I began to realize that if we got people to intentionally reconstruct their stories, actually almost to reprogram the way they are thinking about a particular area, such as managing money or managing their health or managing a boss, that intentionally changing that story by repetitively intending to do so, and we found the best way to do that was actually handwriting that story out and recurring themes, story elements that are antithetical to the way they've been thinking, that actually block their path, that have been dysfunctional for them, actually do not get any kind of attention or any kind of investment of their energy. And a new story over a period of time begins to form. And that story, if properly embedded, becomes transformative.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, we are all running multiple stories all the time. There might be connecting threads, but we would have a story, for example, about our health, a story about our work, a story about something else. Is that right?
Yes, we have a story about everything. You have a story about your happiness and what makes you happy and whether or not you are happy. You have a story about your parents, about your mother and your father or your siblings, about friendships, about your boss, about whether or not it's going to be possible for you to actually be physically healthy or not. You have a story about exercise, a story about food and diet. And all those stories are either functional or dysfunctional. They either help you to get closer to who you really want to be and to actually be successful in life, or actually they become a powerful form of derailment. And it's actually restructuring the way the cerebral cortex, this executive function in the brain works. It's an important part of change. It's not enough by itself, but it's a huge piece. It's a cognitive piece, and then we need some behavioral pieces to go with that. But both sides of this equation are critical, and most people have not really understood how powerful the stories we carry within us, that we speak publicly and that we speak to ourselves privately. The master storyteller we found is the private voice. And if we get that private voice aligned with what we want, align that with our public voice, we have a chance to do some pretty transformative work.
What was it that allowed you to see how powerful this was?
Most of the lessons that we learned in this venue came from our work with elite athletes who were trying to break new records, who were trying to do things that no one had ever done before, or certainly break their own best performances. And we found that, for instance, if a tennis player inside, every time they missed a forehand, would say something to themselves like, "I hate my forehand. I'm never going to have a good forehand." Or "I hate putting in golf. If it wasn't for putting, I'd be the best in the world. I'm never going to develop this part of my life." Well, that story is going to be their destiny. That as long as they have that storyline, it's pretty much going to be self-fulfilling. So that we start very intentionally restructuring consciously how they are to speak to themselves when they make a mistake. It could be simply as let it go. And in the bigger picture, I may not have the best forehand now, but one day I'll have one of the best forehands in the world. I'll be one of the best putters on the planet. and putting will not be the limiting factor that keeps me from becoming a successful professional. When we got that internal language properly, structured, things opened up. And that was the beginning of an exploratory search on how this worked in everything from military training to work with hospital settings, with physicians and surgical teams, and then all the way up through executive coaching. And that work has been some of the most exciting work we do, because that's how we actually implement the change process, by having people tell their story, their old story that's dysfunctional, and replace it with a new one intentionally, and they craft it in longhand with their own hand, and that's how we start the transformation process.
So you've just actually answered for me what was going to be my next question, which is, where the evidence base is. Of course, the mission of our professional association of the Institute is to look at the evidence. And what I think you just told me is that you're seeing this across a very broad spectrum.
Yes, we're data crazy. We love to collect data. We love to look at outcomes that are real and quantifiable and measurable. And human performance in sport is, for the most part, it's pretty measurable. Your times, Dan Jansen, when he broke the world record at 1:12:43 at the 1,000. And he came in 26th in the world 2 years earlier, and he broke a world record. And when he broke the 500 meter at 35:76, those are numbers that actually are real. And so we love that when we move into areas in other, maybe even more important areas of life. Sometimes the metrics are more challenging. So we rely on standardized instruments. We do blood work. We do the most reliable measures of lean body mass with bod pods, and I want something that I can count on, and I'd love to see the data in terms of our outcomes. And if we don't have the outcome data, then I think we have to be very careful and very cautious about what we're doing. And for our entire time, we've had a reverence for science, and I really appreciate this audience because they also share a kinship with the importance of science being one of those markers that are critically important to get our story straight. We have to have great science, then we have to have a compelling story around that science that actually moves us to act in ways that are consistent with that science.
Good. How would a coach, somebody in this audience or in our association, how would they begin to use your model and your methods?
Well, there are so many ways that we conceptualize this process of change. And I tried to articulate it fundamentally in the context of the program this morning. But we use an energy-based model, a model that's based on this notion that the most precious resource we have as human beings is human energy. And human energy is the currency of life. It begins with our first pulse and ends with our last. And most of us never think about managing energy. And what we found was that is the thing that actually spawns change, is the changing course of energy. And what we're doing in a change model is changing the way energy flows in our life. And when we change our thinking and storytelling, we're changing the way energy actually flows in this executive functional area of our life. And if it's in the work of biomechanics, we're working to make a more precise forehand or putting stroke. We're changing the dynamics of energy flow in the actual biomechanics of that swing pattern or in movement. And we believe that that's the thing that integrates all the sciences, is understanding how to control the flow of energy. And we begin that in our own physical body by building up a reservoir of energy and health, from great fitness and great nutrition, great rest and sleep and so forth. That's what provides us with the opportunity to make changes. And that's what boosts our willpower, our sense of self-discipline and self-regulatory, self-control mechanisms. And so the system that we use that I hope will be of real value to the participants here is one that really reveres human energy, sees that as the basis of it, and that storytelling is actually simply changing the way energy is actually moving in the cognitive part of our life, and that's a huge part of human change. And then when we change how we act, we're also changing the flow of energy, and it's that cognitive behavioral kind of sequencing that actually produces long-term sustainable change.
So if I understand right, I was going to ask you how you adapt this model in different settings, between an athlete or a military setting or an educational. But basically, there's not a whole lot of adaptation. It is based on energy.
The model is the same. It's all about human performance, and whether it's a surgical team or a Navy SEAL, a special ops person deployed in a very very hostile environment, whether it's an executive who finds himself or herself in a very, very difficult situation in layoffs and all kinds of human tragedy, kind of unfolding with the lives being changed, people they care about. And in an athlete who's going through debilitating injuries and has failed several times to meet what they believe were the goals that they set for themselves. Those are all part of a performance continuum that really fundamentally is energy-based. That if you can rally the right energy in the right directions and get energy to kind of manifest itself in ways that support the mission properly, you can make changes, and the process is fundamentally the same across all those performance spectrums.
Good. How do you see your work evolving? What do you think maybe the next steps or the frontier is on what you're doing?
Well, it's a great question. We're always looking at this. And I think for us, the future is going to be using the world of high tech, really the world of apps and the ability to self-regulate, to be able to use what we call kind of your self-coaching feedback. That the hardest part of change is the support side. You need a coach with you all the time. These executive coaches can't be in the lives of people all the time, but their presence needs to be there at those critical moments. And we believe that using technology in a very friendly way to support the ongoing coaching when the person isn't there, but the need for prompts, the need for a little refresher, maybe the voice of your child telling you that you promised me that you were going to exercise today because you won't want to be around, I want you around for my graduation, and those kinds of things. They're very powerful, and we need to do a lot better in terms of interventions around support and accountability, and we think there are new frontiers that can be developed in those areas that will pay some really valuable dividends in the future.
Are there training programs? Are there, if our members or coaches, that see these interviews, if they wanted to go and intensely be trained in your models, how would they do that?
Well, we have our Human Performance Institute in Orlando. We have a 9-acre campus. It's a beautiful place. It's a very exciting place to be. And we have open enrollment. It's a 2.5-day program, and I think they would find it exhilarating to see how this is all put into place. But we offer that there. We offer it in different places all over the United States, and it's actually offered worldwide. So we, and our faculty is a very unusual faculty. We have everything from former head of the Navy SEALs to the former head of the Blue Angels Precision Flying Team, who are extraordinary performance coaches who understand performance under pressure. And those folks are teaching, in different places, literally almost everywhere in the globe. But our best work, I think, is done at the Institute, and that's in Orlando. And you can go online and see when those open enrollments are, and they are a 2.5-day program.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to tell us about the book or about the way that the work is developing that you think that I haven't asked you about?
Well, I think this is really an important frontier that I try to connect in this conference, this notion that if you want to really reach the outer limits of what you're capable of, you have to understand how crucial personal health is, taking care of yourself physically, to making all the rest of this brilliant hardware manifest itself. And that so often we get a story going that we're going to be great, but we never really look at how we maintain that operating system and the power supply system, which is really human energy. And so we need to, when we're fatigued, the whole system actually really becomes so much less than it's capable. And we need a lot of powerful energy into the system to get it to really reach its full potential. So I want to just emphasize here the importance of executive coaches, number one, taking care of themselves and really building that health quotient and intelligence at the physical level. And that'll pave the way for brilliant intelligence emotionally, brilliant mental intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. And then they can take that to their constituency. But if you don't take care of yourself and you ask others to, they can see it pretty quickly. So that to me is a message that I would like to think resonates with people, and will make a contribution in this whole coaching, executive coaching area, which I think is such an important area.
Yeah, you have to walk your talk.
You have to walk your talk, and people pick it up very quickly when you don't.
Yeah.
It's a hollow message.
I'm very struck, too, by it would seem to be a given that physical health would be necessary for high performance. And I think that most of us think of it only for athletes. And what you're saying is it's just as applicable to all of us.
We call them corporate athletes. We call the physician as athlete. We call it the nurse as athlete. I mean, we need to think of ourselves as in training, or we can't reach, we just don't have the energy to fuel all the things that are important. Our engagement suffers, and most importantly, our family suffers, because we give so much at work, we got nothing left over for our families. And that's what we'll all say is the most important part of our life, that they get the energy leftovers. And that's just not an acceptable story. When we really confront that, that's a dysfunctional story that has tragic consequences on many levels. So if for no other reason, you got to fight for your family, make sure that you've got the energy, take care of yourself so that they don't get shortchanged. And that was another message I hope resonated with the audience today.
I think it did. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.